Hello, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. As said, I am Detective Inspector Fiona Bail, and I'm a serving police officer formerly with Cambridgeshire Police, but currently seconded to the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre as the Head of Cyber and Innovation. So my background is from serious and complex fraud and cybercrime, so I have a fairly good understanding about the impact these attacks can have on businesses. So as said, I'm going to go through very briefly what the ECRC is and why the centres have been set up. We'll go through a little bit of the current threat picture within the region and how the ECRC can help businesses, as well as some practical tips and awareness. So what is the ECRC? The ECRC is a Home Office supported project bringing together policing, industry experts and academia with the aim of increasing cyber resilience within small and medium businesses in the region. We're a not-for-profit membership organisation led by police officers. So the directors of the company are Detective Superintendent Paul Lopez from Essex Police, as well as the Assistant Chief Constable from the Eastern Regional Organised Crime Unit, Dan Vazovic. We're part of a network of cyber resilience centres across the UK. So the ECRC covers Norfolk, Suffolk, Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Essex and Kent, but all of the centres offer the same service. So why have the cyber resilience centres been set up? Well, unfortunately, it's because cybercrime is increasing and businesses are the biggest targets, and policing aren't in a position to actually investigate all of the crimes that are happening. So Beaming's 5 years in cybersecurity found that 1.5 million organisations fell victim to cybercrime in 2019. So that equates to 25% of all UK businesses compared to just 13% in 2015. And that figures are likely to be higher over, from the pandemic as well. A report from the Cabinet Office estimated the cost of cybercrime to the UK businesses to be £21 billion per year. And in this region alone, Action Fraud reported a loss of £233.3 million with fraud and cybercrime between January and July this year. So cybercrime has a huge impact for businesses, and it's important that we do everything that we can to actually stop businesses becoming victim before they actually have this level of loss within their business to cope with. So although some cyber criminals want to hack into systems just to wreak havoc or just because they can, for most, the main goal is really to swindle other people and make money. And this can be directly through stealing banking credentials or indirectly, such as the use of ransomware to get paid for that return of data or the sale of that data, such as login credentials to other cyber criminals or other customer details. And then we also have seen an increase in state-sponsored hackers who are looking to steal intellectual property. And that was quite evident over the pandemic with the research institutions within the UK suffering cyber attacks for that theft of intellectual property. And although most people might not have been subjected to a traditional crime, such as an assault or a burglary, I'm fairly confident that everybody listening to this will have had at least one phishing email, text or call, which sort of describes the actual scale of the problem that we're dealing with. And really, businesses seem to be unaware or unprepared that they are actually victims of crime. Within the Eastern region, there are about 600,000 SMEs. And unfortunately, if you have an online presence, then you will be a target for criminals. Criminals target vulnerabilities. So in the same way that a burglar would prefer an unlocked house without CCTV, cyber criminals look for the easiest targets, and they're generally the ones without fundamental cybersecurity controls in place. And really, when businesses do realise that they need to do something, it's difficult for them to know where to start or who to trust. So the ECRC aims to be that starting point as a trusted partner to give support and guidance, but also affordable services and referrals to trusted partners. So you might have noticed that I use the word cyber resilience rather than security, and that's because the questions that we're asking have actually changed. We used to ask, what are you going to do if you get attacked by cybercrime? Unfortunately, this has changed to what are you going to do when you have got attacked? It's unfortunately almost certain that every business will be subject to an attack of some kind. So we need to talk about cyber resilience rather than cyber security. We need to get businesses to recover quickly from any attack, as well as trying to prevent it in the first place. So you might ask, what makes the ECRC different from the local police force giving out crime prevention advice? And so to take you through that, I'm going to take on a little bit of history of crime prevention through the ages. So crime prevention has been a basic mission for policing since Sir Robert Peel back in 1829. And to be honest, not much has actually changed since those early days. In the 1950s, post-World War II, we started to tell the public to lock doors and windows. In 1965, the Cornish Committee recommended that there's a crime prevention in each area, and by 1990, crime prevention officers were embedded into most forces. And in 2010, sorry, I've gone too quickly, there were dedicated crime types specialised in, and they were labelled as protect. But the police were really there to tell people what to do and not necessarily to help them to do it. So this year, the CRC brings together business, industry experts and policing to prevent crime, and handing over that responsibility to an independent, not-for-profit business is something very, very different. Policing's always been independent, so if we arrive to a business who maybe has a smashed window, we can say for crime prevention guidance, you really need to get that fixed. What we couldn't do is say, actually, these are the glaziers in your area and these 5 we would recommend. The CRC is different in this respect, is actually we have trusted partners that we can refer to who have had a minimum standard of cyber experience that will actually be able to deliver what our customers need. So we provide free of charge core membership, which aims to help businesses put in place those fundamental cyber security controls. Our members get free access to national guidance as well as regional crime trends, so businesses can be aware how criminals are actually targeting businesses in the East. You get a contact from a member of the CRC to actually discuss where businesses are within their cyber resilience journey and actually look at what areas they need to consider as a priority. There's a little steps journey, which is 1 email a week, just looking at one little aspect of cyber security controls, with the understanding that actually there is an awful lot of information for businesses out there, and it can be really difficult to understand what those priorities should be. So we've tried to break it down into little bite-sized pieces, and actually if you follow that programme through, you should be able to then get an accreditation at the end of it. And then we also help companies access affordable cyber resilience services. So that's through actually directing them to free tools, so from the National Cyber Security Centre, as well as our affordable cyber services through our student services, which I'll talk to you in a little bit about, as well as our trusted partners. So part of the ECRC's aim is to help businesses get to the stage where they're ready for cyber essentials. Now, Cyber Essentials is a government-backed scheme, which is an annual review of businesses' cyber security, which helps to stop businesses falling victim to the common cyber threats. It's like an annual MOT for your business's cyber resilience. Now, our trusted partners are accreditation bodies within the Eastern region, and we can refer businesses directly to them once businesses are actually ready to hit that Cyber Essentials stage. And this is, as I said, one of the key differences between the policing and the ECRC, is that we can actually recommend companies who can deliver a service. So Cyber Essentials looks at 5 control areas, and if you get accredited, it can fully or partially mitigate over 90% of common cyber threats. There's also insurance, cyber insurance cover included if you have the accreditation verified, but you can actually have a look at the free question set on the IASME website. So you can actually see whether it's worth paying your money before you even do. So moving on to what our current threats seem to be at the moment. So we obtain information from a number of sources, but reporting to policing is vastly underreported in this area. So we do rely on outside sources as well. If we just look at reporting to policing or through action fraud, we understand that companies don't always know what they're reporting is both a cybercrime and a fraud. So you really have to look at both fraud and cybercrime statistics to get an accurate picture. So just looking at cyber, we've had 375 reports of cybercrime within the Eastern region, which has a loss of £376,000. And now that doesn't include the time to recover from those losses. That is actually just what gets reported at the time of that reporting. And you can see the top type of attacks is hacking social media email, computer viruses, hacking server, hacking extortion, and hacking PBX or dial-through frauds. And the organisation types are limited companies as the number one. So all of those companies who think they're too small to be attacked, actually limited companies are the main source of our victims. And then if we look at the fraud, we have over 3,500 reports of fraud with over a £51 million loss. And if you look at the categories of those, the top one is actually none of the others. And within that are going to be cyber-related frauds. So actually some of this information is directly linked into our cybercrime. And then if we look at the industries most at risk, education has had a huge amount of ransomware against it recently, and that's been quite evident. There's the University of Sunderland very recently. Healthcare has sensitive customer data. That's getting hit in terms of exfiltration and also ransomware. Again, legal services, they have huge amounts of sensitive customer data, which is interesting for criminals. They know that they will get payment for it. And then you have technology companies with that theft of intellectual property. And at the bottom is the SMEs, because unfortunately, the smaller the companies, they may not be aware of those basic cybersecurity controls. So one of the free tools that we actually promote is Police Cyber Alarm. I mentioned that burglars liked houses without CCTV. So Police Cyber Alarm is like a CCTV for your network. It's a police-led project to help businesses and organisations understand and monitor suspicious activity. It's free and it's available to all businesses within the East. So once you become a Cyber Alarm member, you can install a virtual server on your system, which is used to collect and process traffic logs and helping you identify suspicious activity from your firewall. And that really puts you in control of actually getting some mitigation in to defend yourself from those attacks at an early stage. So recently, a Cyber Alarm member was suffering loss of their bandwidth on their internet connection. And a misconfiguration by a service provider was actually routing traffic from another user onto their internet connection. So Police Cyber Alarm was able to identify the origin of that suspicious traffic and was able to inform the member, who was able then to bring that up with their service provider and actually getting back their full service. So moving on to some practical tips and awareness. And I'm hoping that I'm preaching to the choir with this. But password compromise is still one of the most common ways of cyber attacks being enacted, and it's also one of the easiest things to make individuals and companies more cyber resilient. So I apologise if you're already using these guides, but I think it's so important that you really should be making sure that you and your company and also your friends and family are actually doing this as well, because they are fairly simple guidelines to work by. So the first one is don't use the same password across your multiple sites. So the risk is that if the details get released in a data breach, then any account where you're using the same password could be accessed. And that's especially bad if it's your email address or your social media sites for businesses. Unfortunately, data breaches are really, really common at the moment. And actually utilising email addresses as our usernames, which is what we mostly do, gives a really wide attack vector for criminals. So the next thing is to make your passwords complex. So the NCSC recommends 3 random words. So the way that I explain this is think of a memory of something that's happened and take 3 words from that memory and combine them randomly. So something like the tree fell down, smashed the fence and the dog escaped is a fairly unique memory for me. I can use then escaped, smashed, tree, add in some complexity in terms of uppercase letters or some symbols and numbers, and that's a really unique, strong password. The problem with using those lovely complex passwords is remembering them all. Most people have between 60 and 100 accounts now, and realistically, we're not designed to remember those strong passwords. So we would recommend the use of a password manager, So you remember one really nice, strong, unique password, and you use a password manager to actually remember the rest of them. And we do have some videos up on our YouTube channel which explain password managers a little bit more if you're not aware of them previously. Third thing is to enable two-factor authentication, especially on your email accounts and your social media accounts. So if a criminal gets into your email, as well as pretending to be you or someone you're talking to, they could potentially reset any password for any other accounts, as most people use their email for that password reset link. Now, social media is important as this is a business's shop front in the digital world. So if a criminal gains access and locks you out, one, it's difficult for you to get back into control. But during that time period, you won't be able to contact your customers through that channel, and you actually have no control over what that criminal is posting about you and your business. And then the last 2 points is to do with a website called Have I Been Pwned? I'm just going to show a short video and talk through this. So you simply enter your email address into Have I Been Pwned, and you can see if your details have been compromised, and if so, what data was actually released. So in this example, you can see there are 3 data breaches with usernames, email addresses, passwords, IP addresses and phone numbers being released. So knowing what information has been compromised helps you to defend yourself against those phishing attacks using that information. And you can click in for more information about the breach. You can also enter a password to see if it's been compromised before. So criminals regularly update lists of the most commonly used passwords, so it's worthwhile seeing if your strong password actually is. You can also download a list of compromised passwords, and the NCSC recommends that when users sign up to a website that you actually check their password isn't already on that list. So if you have your own domain, you can do a search for that domain and actually register so you get notified if your domain does appear on a compromised list, meaning that you can actually change your accounts quickly before a criminal has the chance of accessing them. Now, in terms of those password lists, a developer recently realised that some of the contacts within the database that they managed was created before the password rules were introduced around their password policies. So he ran the list of his clients' passwords all hashed against the list of most used passwords, and a large number are actually on there, including the use of the word password as the password. So he's then had to go back through, reset all the password and actually ensure those creation rules were up to date. And I guess for people within the developer community, actually thinking about historical systems where rules may not have been already enacted when you look at your cyber resilience and security policies might be something that you want to consider. So along with password compromise, phishing is by far the most common vector for cyber attacks to start. So according to Meta Compliance, 91% of all cyber attacks start with a phishing email. And attackers are getting really sophisticated and utilising up-to-date current affairs to make their impact known. So these are just some of the types of phishing that are out there. So you have email phishing, spearfishing, whaling, vishing, smishing, angler phishing, as well as farming, and then pop-up phishing, which is a fairly new one, where you're actually getting pop-up notifications on websites. So this is a real example of an email phishing which almost worked in our region. James was emailed by someone purporting to be a senior person within the company, and he asks him for a favour. And this favour is to buy vouchers. So James, being a nice person, thinking that he's actually being asked by a senior member within the team, think that's nice and says, yes, of course. The reply, however, starts ringing those bells, at which point James reported the attempt as a phishing. So James was initially fooled because the display name on that email was actually the same as the person being purported to be contacting him. However, the actual rest of the email was really wrong, and it was completely out of character for that person to be contacting him and asking for those things in the same way. But it's very easy for people to just read the very start of an email address and actually not follow it along. So this is a spearfishing example. So in this example, cyber criminals targeted Donna from marketing. So Donna doesn't report to Nick, the CFO. So the scammers assumed that she didn't have Nick's phone number in her contact list, which meant it didn't actually matter what phone number they were using. They also sent the text message over the weekend to make it feel more urgent, and probably that she wouldn't want to talk on the phone over the weekend. She'd be happier to accept text. So to make it feel urgent, the scammers crafted a fake email complaint letter from a key customer. They made it seem like Donna did something wrong and that she needed to fix it ASAP. Scammers personalised the link with Nick's name, and they made it feel like a secure drive with the hopes that Donna would think it was legitimate. And so next they built a little bit of trust by saying to Donna that Nick wanted to talk to her on Monday in order to talk this whole problem out, see what went wrong. And it's those type of little conversational tidbits that actually builds that trust, because if it was just a scammer, well, why are they worrying about a conversation on Monday? It also increases that concern that Donna actually has to do something. So Donna does take the bait. She goes on to a fake Google page, and she then clicks in and logs in using her real username and password. She finds a fake complaint letter, which again helps to remove her suspicion that there's anything wrong, which means that she won't report it, and the criminals have a whole weekend to do whatever they want within that system. So these are some examples of smishing. So this is our text message scams. The one in relation to the update on the parcel is one of the most common at the moment. That link takes you through to a payment page, which for a small fee, usually less than £10, you get to have your parcel delivered. With more people at home and having a larger number of parcels being delivered, and with Brexit, we're having those extra charges are more common than before. So people actually think, oh, that's potentially legitimate. They don't really think about it, they pay their money. The people then get recontacted from the criminals claiming to be from the bank, saying, oh, we've noticed a suspicious transaction, and they utilise some very clever talking to actually obtain further banking details, and they realistically try and clear out their victims. And people have lost thousands of pounds because of these scams. So another smishing example, this one is to try and get around the two-factor authentication. So the attacker sends the victim a fake text message claiming to be from Google, from their Gmail security support, and tells the victim to expect shortly a forthcoming recovery code via SMS from another phone number, which needs to be sent back in reply to the message. The hacker then starts to do a login attempt at the legitimate service, but then acts that they don't know the right password. The attacker tells the service to send them an SMS recovery code. That code gets sent to the victim, who obviously will enter that code back into their text message. The hacker then takes that code and can get into that victim's accounts, properly authorised. And social engineering or the verification codes might be one reason why you'd consider recommending an authenticator app or a physical token rather than SMS via phones. So some of the ways to spot a phish are about this slide. So phishing campaigns do vastly vary in the sophistication of the campaign, but ultimately they want the target to do something. So phishing attacks use urgency, authority, mimicry and curiosity to get users to click links or download attachments. And really some of the old ways of identifying a phish are not reliable anymore. So things like we used to say, check the grammar and the spellings. Well, cybercriminals have caught up with that, and actually they are really carefully crafting their emails. So users need to check that the links that they're clicking on are the genuine ones, but that's not always that easy. So one of these is a phishing URL, but can you tell which one it is? I'll put you out of misery. It was the top one, and it may not be obvious at first glance, but the top one uses a Cyrillic A rather than the ASCII A. And although most browsers are on the lookout for these homophone attacks and will display the underlying domain, so in this case it's xn//pple/43d.com, by the time a user actually ends up on that site, it might be too late already. They might have already believed that they're trusting this site and entering their details. So the use of password managers are actually one way that this can be defeated, because password managers actually have an autofill function. So if a user goes to a site that they expect to have that autofill function, it doesn't, they might actually then consider, well, how do I get there? Did I check the URL again? Did I click on a link to get to this location? Maybe I'll just start everything again. So other ways that computer companies can actually help is that don't let users install programs, have an admin versus user accounts. And that's also when you think about protecting potentially your family and maybe old relations and very young relations, actually having them not running as an admin could save them a lot of money and save having malware installed on your phone, on your devices. So don't allow auto run. Again, so hopefully programs won't be installed without you actually realizing that they are. Enabling two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication for any system that you actually utilize is really useful. If you have enterprise Office, Outlook, sorry, the NCSC has worked with Microsoft to actually have an add-in within Outlook that you can report phishing emails straight away. So when we're talking about being aware of phishing, and actually you need to be aware of every single email that comes in, actually having that little add-on button might be just that little nudge that your employees need to think, oh, can I just click that button and report it? Do I need to do that? And it's just that little constant reminder that might be very useful. We went through that phishing examples, and actually having those conversations with your staff and having that staff awareness training so that they're aware of all of the different ways that actually they could be attacked is really important. And also knowing what information is available for crafting those emails can be key as well. So the NCSC recommends securing email systems as a way to protect individuals and businesses that you do business with, to make it hard for criminals to impersonate organisations. So this helps you protect your brand and reputation, as well as reducing the time that you're dealing with the consequences of email fraud. So they talk about sender policy framework, which allows you to publish IP addresses, which should be trusted for your domain. Domain keys identified mail, allows you to cryptographically sign emails you send to show that it is actually from your domain. And although DKIM isn't as widely supported as SPF, it does have the advantage of being able to support forwarded emails. And then you have domain-based message authentication, reporting and conformance, DMARC. So that allows you to set a policy for how receiving email servers should handle email, which doesn't pass either the SPF or the DKIM checks. So that can include your untrusted emails, which should be discarded. And then the DMARC can also generate your reports, so you can actually see what is being accepted and not. They also recommend protecting your email in transit with TLS. So modern software development and usage relies on the use of package managers that support code reuse, including code from registries where developers upload their built software packages for others to download from the internet and use. Package typo squatting is a type of software supply chain attack where the attacker tries to mimic the name of an existing package on a public registry in hopes that users or developers will accidentally download the malicious package instead of the legitimate one. So you can see on this slide, we've got moving -images instead of moving _ images, and nmap-python instead of python-nmap. So it is a growing attack vector. It's really easy for attackers to upload a malicious package that's very similar to the real one. So it'd be worth making sure that if you're using open source repositories that you do check the name carefully, and actually the dates. Look at when it's been added. Is that what you expected to have? Have they been downloaded the expected amount of time? So if you're the first person to download a repository that a source code that you've used previously, just have a think about actually whether you're downloading the right ones. And the other thing is to consider using a private repository. The National Cybersecurity Centre has a guide about the best ways of protecting your repository if you do want to actually go down that route. So ransomware has been in the press an awful lot over the last couple of years. And one of the things that we always say to businesses is to have a backup so that if you are hit with ransomware, you can actually recover your business. You don't have to pay the ransom. However, research shows that victims are still paying for ransomware even when they have their backups. And the question is why? So there are two reasons. The first one is that the backups haven't been tested. So how long is that data restoration going to take? Some companies have discovered that they've got a few petabytes of backup that they need to recover, which is going to take 3 months to download. So what option do you have at that stage? Can your business survive for 3 months not having any data? And the second one is that the digital key required to decrypt your backup is on the server that actually got struck by ransomware. So you have no way to actually recover that data, even though it's sat there waiting for you. So our guidance would be, yes, definitely have your backups, but test your backups, have that contingency plan, do your the test, actually recover your data, and make sure that everybody knows their part to play in that recovery process. Although saying that, if you do have to pay the ransom, there is no guarantee that you're going to get your ransom, you're going to get the data back. I think recently, only 20% of companies who paid their ransom actually got the full data. I should give that. So there's been a bit of research around the PISA ransomware, and they looked at some keywords that was being used. So unsurprisingly, the script that they found that PISA was using sought out files relating to company financials, personal information such as audit, banking information, etc. But it also looked for keywords that could be particularly harmful for companies, such as crime, investigation, federal, hidden, secret, illegal, terror. So just knowing that the fact that ransomware is using a script to look for files, is it a way that you can actually rename your files using a different naming convention and just make it so that if a criminal does get into your system, actually it's just going to take them longer to get any data that's going to be worth anything? By making them work harder for that data, you've got a better chance of actually finding them and stopping them before they're able to get all of your sensitive data uploaded. And as I said, paying isn't always the solution. So although more people have paid recently than last year, only 8% got all of their data back. Nearly a third couldn't recover more than half of their data. And of 80% of businesses that chose to pay then experienced a subsequent ransomware attack, of which almost half thought it was the same attackers. So even though you're actually paying, there's no guarantee that your data is going to be given back to you, that they're not actually going to sell it at a later date, or actually look at your system, put in a backdoor or another vulnerability that they can use just to get you to pay again, because they know that you've paid once, you're likely to pay again. So I just want to talk to you also about a darknet marketplace called Genesis. Now this is one that I only found out about very recently, but it's a by invitation marketplace which is selling bot data, which is collecting post MFA tokens. So it's a bit of malware that gets installed, and then when you actually use one of your multi-factor authentications, that token is then being sent off to this repository and you can buy them. So it's $15 via Bitcoin to actually get onto the system. As I said, it is an invite only. But once you do, you can buy these tokens and then actually go on to other people's systems using the MFA, and they think it's all okay. So in consideration about this, it might be if you're using MFA tokens, is to actually reduce the amount of time that your token is live for. Again, so that if it does end up on a repository like this, the chances are that a new token will be issued before that old one can actually be utilised by a criminal. But also, is there a way that actually you can do some proactive work utilising marketplaces like this to identify if you've got malware through your system, which is collecting these type of things? And there is the link to actually an article which goes into much more detail about that marketplace. So I said that the CRC actively promotes free tools. So the NCSC has some really great tools, but people just don't seem to know where they are. They're not using them. So we recommend businesses utilising a cyber action plan. It's a really short questionnaire which just goes through some main control areas and actually highlights where businesses may need to look at as a priority. There's an exercise in the box. As we were talking about that business continuity and actually doing that backup and recovery, exercise in the box is a way of actually testing your responses to cyber attack. There's a board toolkit to actually raise that awareness and have those conversations at a senior level within a business, as well as free cybersecurity training for staff. And they also have early warning and logging made easy for organisations as well, in terms of some active cyber defence and actually being able to look at what activity is going on with their systems. In terms of the CRC ourselves, we have affordable student services. So we provide 8 cyber resilience services which have been designed especially for smaller businesses, including the self-employed and the third sector. We work with university students to deliver this. So our local universities in our region have been approached, and students are then put through a process to see whether they have the skills and expertise and really drive in order to come into this area. And then they get mentored by one of a senior ethical hacker to actually deliver the work that comes through our customers. So students benefit from really high quality work experience. They get excellent real world situations, which means that they can actually go industry ready when they finish university and find a job. And that obviously helps the cyber industry as a whole, helps speed up the UK's talent ready for graduation. But businesses who would never consider having these services actually get it at a really, really, and I do stress, affordable rate. And we're not trying to compete with commercial companies. We are looking at those businesses who just wouldn't be able to afford a normal commercial company to deliver these services. So I said we deliver 8 services. So we do 3 types of vulnerability assessment. That's internal, remote and web app. These assessments are designed to inform organisations about weaknesses that are present, as well as giving them direction on how to reduce those risks that the weaknesses cause. So for businesses wanting to reduce their security risk, a vulnerability assessment is actually a really good place to start. And if you're working on web apps, it might be worth considering actually regular assessments during that build process to ensure that the project is secured by design from the outset. And in terms of the report, it is a plain language interpretation of the results. You get a meeting with the student who's actually delivered that as well, so you can actually have a conversation with that person to really understand what vulnerabilities were found. It is not a pen test, so a pen test will go find a vulnerability and then see how far that vulnerability can be exploited. We are not at that stage. We are doing that. This is the vulnerability we can see. So it's the step before a penetration test. We deliver 2 types of internet investigation, and this is really around that awareness of that phishing that we spoke about earlier. So we do one for an individual and one for a business as a whole. And really, by understanding what the world knows about an individual or the company, you can inform about what the potential phishing targets might be. So it might be that the companies publish details about a deal with a new supplier. They may not be cyber secure. maybe they're a target to actually get into your systems through that trusted supply chain route. Or maybe you're sharing information about CEO's upcoming visit to an offshore conference, which might have that initial start of a, I'm away from the office, I need this money now, can you transfer me some? And then we also offer security policy review to make sure that businesses have the policies that they need and are current for what threats the businesses might face. And then we do a business continuity planning, continuity exercise. So again, building on that NCSC exercise in a box, this would be a guided exercise to actually test to see if you're prepared for the when your business is attacked. And again, phishing, still the greatest cyber threat. So staff need to be aware of the risks of cybercrime and how to protect both themselves and your business. And I think actually by increasing people's awareness of cyber in the whole and how to make individuals secure, you're much more likely then to have that same ethos of security spread throughout your business. So the student services are designed really to highlight those security issues. We cannot fix them as a student service. The customer gets a really detailed report about those issues and how they should be fixed. If they have an ICT team already in place, then actually they would be included in that conversation, which actually helps ICT maintain that relationship. If they haven't got anyone in place, then we would look at referring them to a trusted partner to actually help the company get sort those vulnerabilities out. So in summary, the CRC is a new way of working for the police. We've handed some of our crime prevention responsibilities to a police-led, but we are an independent, not-for-profit business. Cybercrime is a growing problem, and all businesses, if you've got an internet connection, are a target for cyber criminals. Unfortunately, most businesses still don't realise that they are a target. And if you do realise, then maybe you might be a bit unsure about where to start or to who to trust. But we'd like the ECRC to be that starting point with our free of charge membership to get really all businesses within our region started on their cyber resilience journey. Ultimately, we are here to help businesses. If there is a free option, we will always promote that over a paid service. So if you have a look at our website, you'll find a few resources as well as some fun things to do, quizzes, our cyber resilient bingo. Ultimately, please just join our membership and help protect yourselves and your business. Thank you for listening. I hope it made sense to you all, but feel free for any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Fiona. I've got a number of questions that I'd like to put to you. Some of them I think you've already answered, but it would be quite useful to hear the answers again. So you did say early on that your relationship with normal policing. Now, we, BCS Hertfordshire, have had a relationship with Cyber Protect, and in fact they've been out to the University of Hertfordshire and had a stand at one of our events. So does this mean that their role is changing, or how do you relate to them?
So we work actually really closely with our Cyber Protect teams. We look at really what services they can deliver, and then we support them with those services that are over and above them. So the ECRC is about a journey with our customers. So we will take them from potentially having very little cyber knowledge and actually be able to work with them over an extended period of time to build up that knowledge. If there are free things that our Cyber Protect colleagues can deal with, we will actually refer them back into Cyber Protect within the local forces, so to keep that relationship building. But Protect cannot refer customers to companies, and I think this is the biggest thing. Cyber Protect can give brilliant guidance, and they do a really good job about raising awareness. They cannot, however, then say, well, this you need to have a vulnerability scan, and from that vulnerability scan we can actually see that you have these number of problems. And I think that's where it differs, and where protect will then refer back into the CRC is actually to say this customer is aware that they need help. We can then develop that, what that help looks like. So whether it's through our affordable services, just guidance to some other tools, or actually referrals into trusted partners. But yeah, we definitely work with them, and their role is really still integral to the centres as well.
Okay, and building on that, because we're here live on YouTube, it means that our boundaries are not just Hertfordshire. So you've talked about the east of England, but is this a national initiative?
Yes, it is. So every region in the country has a CRC now. The London one is going live very soon. They're just sorting out the final bits, but they're all around the Specialist Operations Unit within policing. So they're the sort of policing boundaries, I suppose, rather than counties.
Okay, question about Cyber Security Essentials scheme. What's the uptake in a practical sense, particularly amongst very small businesses?
Unfortunately, very low still. I don't want to put a percentage on it because it is increasing all the time. But again, small businesses don't seem to fully appreciate the risk to themselves at the moment. And I don't know that the actual awareness of cyber essentials is hitting all businesses either. So it is growing, but still very small compared to the number of businesses within our region.
Okay, a question now about ICO. Do you think that the ICO should be moving towards making basic cyber security essentials compliance, or at least advising compliance as part of the newly introduced national annual data protection fee stroke registration of businesses? I hope that makes sense.
Yep. Personally, I would love to see that. I think from a legislative point of view, there is obviously always reluctance for government to tell people what to do. By having the data protection acts in place, actually all companies should be protecting their data. And actually the best way of protecting their data would be to get some accreditation. So I'm not sure it actually needs to be formalised. It might just need to be maybe made more, businesses more aware that data protection and cyber resilience actually are so intricately linked.
Okay. Emerging new trends, things that you're starting to see that people may not be aware of yet. Could you tell us what you might be seeing? This is a bit of crystal ball gazing in a way.
It is. Unfortunately, we have. So I think we're going through stages where we are moving away from passwords. I am hoping that people don't reuse passwords across the site, and we've now got on to two-factor authentication. Criminals are starting to look at ways of moving through that two-factor authentication process. So we're getting more sophisticated social engineering in terms of two-factor authentication, like the example that I showed you where you have that preemptive text saying, oh, we're going to send you a code, and actually that code is linked to your verification process. Or that darknet marketplace where actually there is malware specifically designed to steal those MFA tokens. I think that is the direction that actually cyber criminals are going. However, the actual risk to businesses is still very much within that phishing sphere. So they are becoming better at crafting those emails. But ultimately, the attack vector probably won't change for the foreseeable. It's still going to be that personal contact in one way or another.
Okay, I have a question. This is from Richard Wright. Is there scope for independent consultants to act as trusted partners to help and augment the low-cost services?
At the moment, no. So the model of the centre is throughout the the network of the CRCs was all the same. And the reason that our trusted partners have been picked are because they are those cybersecurity companies within the region who can deliver cyber essentials. So IASME, who are the accreditation body for cyber essentials, actually does the vetting and making sure that those companies can provide that service. So we have a level of confidence within those companies. There are very few, I suppose, accreditations that companies can take which would guarantee that they have the ability to deliver those services. It's actually quite an unregulated sphere, I guess, and quite a crowded place. So anyone can call themselves a cybersecurity consultant. There's no actual framework as what that looks like, which I think is one of the reasons why the trusted partner model is quite constrained at the moment. But over time, as the centres develop, that might change.
Okay, question from Chris. What is the worst example of damage, compromise, consequences that you've seen in your career?
That's very difficult. I think there is a range of damage, I suppose, and it depends on how you reflect on damage. You have some companies who actually suffer very little material damage, but the psychological fear that the cyber attack is actually put into, like, the director of the company is huge, and you can't very easily measure that. I've seen an insider threat which has wiped out, so an employee who's actually left hasn't had their credentials taken off them. So a couple of weeks later, they went in and wiped out a database. So I think that was 2 years worth of records that he just disappeared. I know law companies who work on criminal cases have had ransomware attacks. Considering the sensitive nature of those that material, depending on where those criminals who actually have it stick to their word and not release it. At the moment, it's mitigated, but actually that very easily could become hugely damaging for that company if it comes out. So it's a really difficult one. And actually, it's generally not the bigger companies that suffer the most damage. It's the small companies who find themselves without any data anymore. And actually, that could be a year or 2 years worth of work that they no longer effectively have. Or the fact that actually their social media, where they have all of their contacts and all of their contact goes through, they can no longer get on. So it's sorry, it's a very woolly answer, but it's I find it a difficult one to actually understand damage. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of damage.
Of course, this is a follow-up question from Roger Kane. Is there a way that independent consultants may be able to be licensed as a trusted partner?
Not at the moment, but again, it's something that we will look at and we will develop in the future.
Okay, I think this is possibly going to be our final question, looking at the clock. And the question is, what are the top 3 things that you recommend any business owner should do first thing tomorrow morning after having watched this?
Oh, passwords. I'm afraid to say it is making sure that you're not reusing your passwords across your sites. So your email password is separate from any other one, as well as your social media accounts are. Making sure that you have two-factor authentication put onto both your social media accounts, your email accounts, and any admin accounts that you have. So ransomware generally tries to find a domain controller account and take over at that level. So putting two-factor authentication in place hopefully will mitigate some of that risk. And join the CRC, because we will have that conversation with you and actually look at where your business currently is and steps that you can take to make your business more resilient.
Okay, well, many thanks to you, Fiona, for a fascinating, very insightful talk. I think I need to go and think about some of the risks, because clearly they apply not just to small businesses but to us as individuals as well.
Absolutely.
If you've enjoyed this evening, please make sure that you push the like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to be informed about new BCS Hertfordshire content. We look forward to more videos coming very soon. So on behalf of all of us here, many thanks to Fiona and to Chris and everyone else. So good night for now.